This is an editorial explanation for research that I'm doing. Copyright Matt Curry 2023. If my articulation falters at all, playback is complicated for me for two reasons. One, I can't hear myself, so I use an auto translation system, the CC button at the bottom of the screen. Usually they show up a few hours after I make these videos. But they're not perfect. They can make mistakes. There's also been evidence of tampering by people who disapprove of my making these videos and want to communicate their surrogate messages. On rare occasions, I have found something I said undecipherable and I forget it. I can't go back and work on all of these videos despite that because I have rigidity due to Parkinson's. Well, be that as it may, these things have been decoded. The storyline that I'm discussing has been detected, yet no action has been taken. This requires some explanation. My imaginary audience is someone like myself who disapproves of what I've discovered. So, what could explain something that was meant to be very long? One of the cult I'm describing, Warner Fassbinder made a brutally long 15-hour, 16-hour movie called Berlin Alexanderplatz, which is at the heart of the cult's thinking, as well as its historic relevance and place in history. Since it's brutally complicated, it's difficult to simplify, but I think one possible simplification is to think of Queen Elizabeth. I grew up in the 60s and 80s when her rock stars were running roughshod over the United States of America, a form of foreign service on our soil that we didn't particularly need, understand, or integrate very well. Their messages were often garbled to everybody but themselves. How could this happen? Is that Queen Elizabeth lived in a sort of Alice in Wonderland, saw herself as running a Wonderland show, answerable only to herself. Who in politics wouldn't want their brand of politics attributed to Hollywood magic, Pentagon Disney, and God's love? So you see, it's a very complicated problem that emerges from a situation of people we have long been dominated from. You might see evidence of what I've said in the world around you. They used the world around us, buildings like a chessboard. They used buildings and skyscrapers themselves to help them illustrate and play this overall totality mission about which they have lied to us and yet claim that their complexity is so fascinating it constitutes proof of wisdom. And yet so many people applaud what they've done that there's almost no survival for disapproving it. But its origins take place after World War II, and it is, after all, revenge for the Axis. The basis for the claim that they're avenging the Axis is two items in particular. One, America's legalization of abortion. Two, the atomic blast that ended World War II. Harry Truman, on his 77th birthday, received a phone call from JFK. It sounded, when he spoke of making a decision and going to sleep, and people being too nice to him, like he was filled at his age with remorse and doubt about his decision. I used to think about it. I understood the reasoning processes that he used. It seems to me that the mission of bringing about a symbolic statement of the need of the human race to accommodate one another and achieve social peace was concluded and finalized by that terrible explosion. And yet, by saying that we bear guilt in the matter, rather than interpreting it as something that all human beings needed to grasp and comprehend and change in light of, we were told by these mission avengers that it needed to be remedied by similar means. Who could have been responsible for this, for the punishment of JFK by assassination? When you look at some of the key players in that assassination and the landscapes that they have built in the world around us, you can identify some of these people by certain patterns. Patterns in their personality, and because of their high profile, they required some explanation amongst themselves. So you can expect these patterns from their arguments to reinforce one another. After World War II, we saw Allen Dulles in charge of the OSS and CIA. He put Cecil B. DeMille in charge of Radio Free Europe. Cecil B. DeMille was a progenitor who grew from the biblicalism of the Ku Klux Klan white supremacist movie director D.W. Griffith. They had biblicism in common. He was put in charge of Radio Free Europe while Allen Dulles was forgiving all sorts of Nazi intelligence characters. He knew personally Adolf Hitler, Douglas MacArthur, Dwight Eisenhower, and JFK. He had considerable length of influence and sat on the Warren Commission from where he worked the preposterous deception. So we know some of the things that they used were explanations for example, Douglas MacArthur's refusal to abide the authority of the presidents, which began back in the days when he was used against veterans in Washington, D.C. He went against the order of the president who deployed him. Eisenhower questioned that he did this. He went against Truman. And General Walker, his familiar in Dallas, of course, participated in the assassination of JFK. So, how do we get a situation so brazen, integrated into our social fabric? Well, I have notes here that I'm going to study and build on and bring more of this forward as the day proceeds. This is part one.